In our sports headline, India vs South Africa T20 clash has been abandoned due to adverse weather conditions. And Zimbabwe striker Macaulay Bone is delighted with a surprise call-up to the AFCON squad. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
Coming up on the program today, we're taking a look at quite a few things, and one of them, rebels from the M23 group, have pulled out of the Eastern DRC. We'll find out what's truly motivating them.
It is Thursday, the 18th of December, and welcome to it. Thanks for joining us. I'm Asanda Beda with Peter Ndoro. Another story we'll be looking at is South African President Cyril Ramaphosa on chair a virtual extraordinary summit of SADC heads of state and government in his role as interim chair there. Also, Equatorial Guinea is joining the African Finance Corporation, becoming the 47th member to do so. Amongst other things, they'll be focusing on industrialization as well as economic diversification. We'll find out more. That's going to be in our roundup wrap with our resident analyst a bit later. And of course, there's more coming up on the show. channelafrica.co.za is where you can connect with us, and also on the SABC Plus app, as well as we are YouTube streaming live at Channel Africa 1 is our handle.
Siyabangena manje. Vito iJabulani Nkolele iMagoda. Jabulani is a young man from Giyani in Limpopo in South Africa. Very easy guy, taking things easy. To know me is to know that I love what I do, which I'm crazy about it. So when you hear me on radio, expect the best. Expect great music. Expect great content. Expect 180 minutes of nothing but fun. You'll find me on the morning reset, 3 to 6 a.m., Monday to Friday. Siyabangena baba. Ay.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
On Rise and Shine, after the 6 a.m. news, we take a look at a segment of the show that we call the Africa Roundup. And this is where we bring you a list of news that's happening in and around our continent, having been compiled by our team of researchers, our reporters, and editors to get you in the know and to serve as a throw forward to what one can expect to develop in this new news day. And our Africa Roundup today starts with rebels from the M23 group who have not pulled out of the eastern Congolese town of Uvira despite earlier promises. The group's spokesperson, Willie Ngoma, says they are ready to leave, but conditions for their withdrawal must first be reviewed. He adds that Uvira's residents need protection and the town should be held by a neutral force.
An M23 official has said the Rwanda-backed group captured hundreds of Burundian soldiers during its latest offensive in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. That's after M23 last week entered the strategic city of Uvira near the Burundian border. Patrick Buzubois-Ngui said Burundi should send an official request for the soldiers' return. There was no immediate response from Burundi, which has had troops in eastern Congo for years. M23 entered Uvira less than a week after the presidents of Congo and Rwanda met with President Donald Trump and affirmed their commitment to a peace deal known as the Washington Accords. Continuing clashes have prompted a warning from the Trump administration.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa on Wednesday chaired a virtual extraordinary summit of the Southern African Development Community, SADC heads of state and government. This in his role as interim chairperson of the regional bloc. The summit held under the theme Advancing Industrialization, Agricultural Transformation and Energy Transition for a Resilient SADC reviewed the findings of a fact-finding mission on the political situation in Madagascar.
The developments in Madagascar in September this year brought to the fore the urgent need to accelerate the implementation of our regional development objectives to attain our SADC Vision 2050. This vision seeks to achieve a region whose peoples live in peace and harmony and can realize their economic potential. Through our SADC Protocol on Politics, Defense and Security Cooperation, we seek to promote and maintain peace, security, democracy, and political stability in our region. The protocol also calls for solidarity amongst our people.
Ethiopia and India are upgrading their long-standing ties to a strategic partnership, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has announced following talks with visiting Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Addis Ababa. Modi, who wrapped up his state visit on Wednesday, said the move would give new momentum and depth to cooperation between the two countries.
Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed and I took a big step forward yesterday. We have decided to elevate our bilateral relationship to the level of a strategic partnership. We will also enhance our trade and investment cooperation as well as on defense and security matters. Honorable members, as developing countries, we have a lot to learn from and offer to each other.
The Secretary General of the South Africa's African National Congress Party, the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, has called on African nations to unite against what he's described as an attempt by US President Donald Trump to isolate South Africa from the continent. Speaking at the conclusion of the 27th ANC Youth League Elective Congress held at the University of Limpopo, Mbalula urged young people to take the lead in promoting African unity and self-determination.
We must not allow Donald Trump to isolate us from the African continent. We must fight as the African continent for our own African renaissance. Comrades, we must stand up against neocolonialism, and that cause must be championed by the youth of our country under the ANC Youth League. In this Congress, there are no issues that somebody was bought, this and that. The ANC can learn better from the ANC Youth League. You decided on your leadership peacefully, without any hindrance. Nobody told you what must actually happen.
And finally, Paris Saint-Germain and France forward Ousmane Dembele has been named FIFA's Men's Player of the Year in Doha. Spain's Barcelona midfielder Aitana Bonmati won the Women's Award for the third consecutive year. Here's FIFA President Gianni Infantino.
Officially the best player of the year, the winner of the best FIFA Men's Player Award for 2025. Are you ready? Ousmane Dembélé. Félicitations.
He reigns supreme for Paris Saint-Germain in 2025. Please welcome the world's best player from France, Ousmane Dembélé.
Merci, Président. Vous allez bien, merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Félicitations.
C'est à toi. Merci. Mérité. Merci.
Ousmane, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Wow.
Fikile Lingwati moment there with that final story.
Yes, indeed. And you know, there was quite a lot of controversy because a lot of people thought he should have won the Ballon d'Or. So in some ways, it was trying to balance the books by making him the FIFA World Player of the Year. But, you know, how do you choose who the best player of the world is, especially because football's a team sport.
Exactly.
So if you don't have the right players giving you the right passes and crosses, you may end up not looking as good as you really are. So it's a difficult one, but I suppose it gives us something to do.
Yeah.
So, Ousmane Dembélé, félicitations, bon ton prix. as the best footballer in the year. But coming up, we come back to the continent as we start to take a closer look at what's been happening in West Africa. And Asanda is going to be chatting.
Central Africa today.
Is it Central? It is Central,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
madapiri pazochitika madapiri pazochitika
madotolo oposa 1500 amene amagwira ntchito yaulere mu zipatala zaboma mu dziko la zambia azanyanyala ntchito lachisanu sabata yammawa ndipo daniel shabanda kutambasula nkhaniyi.
madotolo oposa 1500 amene amagwira ntchito mopanda malipiro apamwezi dziko la zambia akuyembekezera kuyamba kunyanyala ntchito. ichi ndi chifukwa chakuti boma lalephera kuwalemba ntchito monga mmene lidawalonjezera. Channel Africa News yalankhulana ndi mkulu wa bungwe la madotolo la Resident Doctors Association of Zambia, Dr. Paul Chiwe, akugomeza kuti madotolo ambiri amene akugwira ntchito mu zipatala zaboma akugwira ntchito yaulere ndipo ali ndi chiyembekezo chakuti tsiku lina adzalembedwa ntchito ndi boma.
zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi madapiri.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So we look now at some of the stories making headlines in the Central African region, and we zoom into this region and we get into conversation with geopolitical analyst Aaron Ngambi, who joins us on Thursdays on Rise and Shine. Our time now being 16 minutes past 6 Central African. Aaron, how are you on this morning?
I'm very well. Thank you, Asanda. Good morning to you and good morning to our listeners this morning.
How's the festive cheer on your side? I'm sure the Christmas trees are up, the presents are under the tree. I don't know if I'm putting you under pressure by asking that question.
No, you're definitely right. The presents have to be under the tree. All the decorations are done, and it's Christmas time.
Great. But what's not so festive is our first story for today in the DRC. The M23 rebels had said that they're going to be withdrawing from the town of Ovira that they had claimed they had taken over. But now they have not withdrawn from this eastern Congolese town, despite earlier promises. What can you tell us here?
Yeah, it's always been a problem to try to solve this DR Congo paradox without including all the players that needed to be on the table. So, for example, the so-called Washington Peace Accord, where President Tshisekedi and President Paul Kagame went to Washington and signed this peace agreement, that effectively removed the M23 from the picture. So the problem you have there is that even though Rwanda has been accused of backing the M23 and they refuse those allegations, you find that the M23 is on the rampage doing anything. And Washington is trying to talk to Rwanda and pointing fingers at them to say you're behind the M23s, and they're refusing. And so it's very difficult to put the puzzle together and see who is who and who's doing what. If these peace accords were serious and if these talks were serious, the M23 representative, even though they're a non-state player, they should have been at the table in Washington, be able to make that physical and verbal commitment, I guess even written commitment to this peace accord. As long as they're just somewhere in the picture, but you cannot really pin them to anything, it's difficult to solve this paradox.
So the rebels are saying that conditions to their withdrawal need to be reviewed. What were these conditions, firstly, do we know? And why would they have agreed to withdraw if they still wanted them reviewed?
Yeah, so first of all, the other thing that we have to remember is that besides the Washington Peace Accords, we also have backdoor or I guess parallel peace talks. Now, these parallel peace talks in Qatar, they include the M23. The M23 have representatives at the table. Now, what the M23 are talking about here, remember, the only preconditions for this deal as a U.S. brokered deal was that the U.S. wants the mineral rights, the mineral wealth, and the rare earth minerals in the eastern part of the DR Congo. The United States has made it clear that we will not we will not do anything to help you guys out, except to give us access to these minerals, and except to open up for American companies to come and be able to take these rare earth minerals. Now, I guess the two presidents who went to Washington had no problem with that, and so they kind of agreed to this loose arrangement. The M23 also is interested, that is in the eastern part of the DR Congo. This is the whole reason why they've taken over the region. So will they give up? Will they give the Americans a free pass and give up some of these areas that they've already taken over? This is a huge step. I think it's expecting too much for the M23 to do, because they've taken over all the major cities in the eastern part of the DR Congo. So they will not give that back easily, I do not think.
Well, that remains to be seen in terms of what it will mean then for the people of Uvira. But let's go to Equatorial Guinea now. The country is joining the Africa Finance Corporation, becoming the 47th member to do so. How strategic is this move, particularly at this point?
Well, the Equatorial Guinea is also another rich mineral wealth country in the central part of Africa on the continent. And so this is a significant step, because they become part of the family of other African states who've signed up to the Africa Finance Corporation, which is basically a corporation or a club of states that come together and they help each other out in terms of economics, in terms of debt restructuring, in terms of finances, for access to finances for different countries. So it is strategic for them. It is also strategic for the continent, because this opens up Equatorial Guinea to other parts of Africa, as well as Africa opening up to it. So I think it's a win-win situation. And like you say, there are about 47 countries in the Africa Finance Corporation. That shows the significance of this club and why it is important for economic development for any of the countries.
Well, some of the focus areas will be industrialization, another being economic diversification. Do you agree that this is what's needed? And what else would they need to implement as forming part of the economic strategy here?
Yeah, industrialization is one of the big ones. I would think that also the focus on technological advancement will be one of the key things that Equatorial Guinea needs to focus on, because most of the parts of Equatorial Guinea are not so advanced, especially when it comes to the technology. So that is important in the sense that today, for you to open up to international markets, for you to be able to have access in the region, you need to have that kind of technology and that kind of training for the people. You need to have the internet and things like that. So I think that should also be one of the areas. But of course, industrialization and diversification of the economy are the two and other major things that they want to focus on with the help of the Africa Finance Corporation.
Right, the Central African Republic now, the government there has been accused of using crypto to extract millions while citizens were battling poverty. How did they do this, and when did this begin?
This began in, I think, 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Or I think it's actually 2002. So the government opened up a few Bitcoin operations. I think there's been about 3 of them that have failed. And the idea was that they wanted to invest in crypto and be able to make that as a legal tender. So in other words, they wanted to make crypto acceptable as a means of exchange, besides the actual currency that they use. But what is sad about the story is that the government intentions were misplaced, and I don't think that they meant well for the people. And so instead of this crypto going into government coffers or to the treasury and be able to be used, what ended up happening is that most of that crypto, millions, as you've said, went into the coffers or the pockets of government officials. Basically, the politicians duped the people in this operation.
Are there estimate figures in terms of how much some of these government officials pocketed from this?
Hundreds of millions of euros. So a significant amount of money even millions of US dollars. So it is a very sad development. And also, the other issue to that is that we understand that the Central African Republic has been working with the mercenary group, like the Wagner group from Russia. And so it is suspected that some of these activities have gone to, paying groups such as the Wagner group because they're heavily involved, even providing security for the president and things like that. So the politicians took away the money in this crypto enterprise, but also it seems like some of that was stifled to actually award or pay or actually benefit groups such as the Wagner group from Russia, which is a mercenary group.
What will this mean then in terms of how the administration of the current president is seen, especially with the Central African Republic going into the polls soon, in terms of how they're viewed as being accountable and transparent?
President Twadera is already very unpopular. I think that it is just a matter of time that the people will rise up. But again, one of the things that some of the countries have been doing in Central Africa as well as West Africa in the Sahel is that they try to use this fear mongering as a way to, you know, uh, kind of promise or guarantee security for the citizens. So if you look at the Central African Republic, it's very destabilized. There's a lot of insecurity concerns. There's a lot of issues with the jihadist groups and things like that. And so what the government does is that if it brings in a mercenary group and it helps them to fight off jihadists or to stabilize the country, at least provide some sort of security, then the people are at ease and they feel that they are protected, that they can trust the government. But yet, in actual fact, you find that some of this government are extremely corrupt.
Will these investigations continue, or is this a closed case and now it's time for those to face the law who have defaulted? And what will it mean then for the other traders in crypto in the country who are not necessarily in government but are just business people on their own?
Yeah, I think the losses on those business owners and business people that deal in crypto, I don't think how they'll be able to probably get redress or effectively be able to get back what belongs to them. I know they've been swindled lots of money, but the question is, will this case or will these issues continue to be investigated? It's just a matter of time because the problem is that you have high-profile politicians who are benefactors of these crimes, and therefore, in some of these countries, it becomes very difficult to actually trust the process that can investigate and prosecute some of these individuals, unless there's a change of government. If for whatever reason, if a miracle happens, there's a change of government due to elections, perhaps that could be the ray of hope that we can see going forward.
All right, well, there's a ray of hope in Gabon, I guess, for those who care about staying online. The country is to launch an onboard Wi-Fi on passenger trains. Is this a Ministry of Transport project or a Ministry of Digitization more?
It's a Ministry of Digitalization and Innovation. I think this is a positive development. If you go back to some of the things we've covered on Gabon, you recall that Gabon was ruled by a family dynasty for over 40, 50 years. And then there was a coup, and quickly that coup transitioned from military to civilian rule. And I think that the president now, the new president of Gabon, is in a hurry to actually prove himself that he can deliver on promises, that he can actually do something positive for the people. Therefore, initiatives like this speak well of the regime, and it looks like the government is innovative and they're bringing ideas to the table. And I think that it's a good thing if you're on a passenger train and you can access Wi-Fi. I mean, it makes business easy. And I know that they want to start with probably just limited use of things like WhatsApp. And then after that, advance to other applications and access to almost anything on the internet. So I think it's a right step in the right direction. It's very innovative and that it will help businesses thrive. And the goal actually is to encourage this, mode of transportation to be able to raise the passengers from a certain, almost about 30% increase. That's the projection from now until 2027, to be able to increase the utilization of this mode of transport by 30%. They're actually targeting about 330,000 people that should be able to be using these trains when traveling. And so Wi-Fi is one of those, free Wi-Fi is one of those incentives that they're trying to use.
Let's hope the passengers don't miss their train stops because they're too busy scrolling on social media for that one.
We hope not.
Right. We're going to leave it there for today, Aaron. Thank you so much for joining us and wishing you a great festive season. I won't be here next week, so I'll see you in the new year. We'll chat then.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Merry Christmas to you, Asanda, and to Peter as well. I hope you both have a wonderful and lovely festive season and happy holidays.
Thank you. Same to you. Aaron Ngambi is geopolitical analyst, giving us our analysis of the Central African region of our continent news-wise. Let's get our news headlines at 6:30 Central African time. Here's Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The one-day SADC Extraordinary Summit ended yesterday with the deployment of panel of elders and mediation reference group to Madagascar to assist in finding a solution to that country's political crisis. This follows a youth-led protest over water and power shortage, which sparked a military coup. The M23 rebels have begun withdrawing from the eastern Congolese town of Uvira in an effort to support US-backed peace efforts, promising to complete the pull-out by today. And authorities in the Indian capital Delhi have rolled out strict measures to curb air pollution that's been in the severe category for the past few days. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's catch you up with what's been happening in the world of sport. And I wonder if people are still talking about Ousmane Dembele and whether he should have won the Ballon d'Or. A very good morning to you, Fikile Lingwati, the man on top of the sports every day for us.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Peter. They still do. The topic is still on with Dembele. But let's start off with cricket news. The fourth T20 international between India and South Africa in Lucknow had to be abandoned to heavy fog and a high risk of danger. The hosts won the first and the third matches by 101 runs and 7 wickets, having bowled the Tories out for just 74 and 117. But the Proteas won the second match by similarly convincing 51 runs. The fifth and the final match of the series will be played at the imposing Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad on Friday. India will now head to the fifth and the final match knowing that they can lose the series. They are enjoying a 2-1 lead. The final match of the Proteas tour to India will be played on Friday. Now, Zimbabwe striker Macaulay Bone has spoken of his delight at being recalled to the national team ahead of this month's AFCON. The England-based forward has not featured for the Warriors in a year, but has earned a surprise call-up in a new head coach Mario Marinaki's squad for the continental showpiece. Zimbabwe have been drawn in Group B alongside Egypt, Angola and Bafana, and Bone says he is determined to seize the opportunity on international duty.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's been a long time coming, been a year now. Over a year since last been with the boys, but look, it's been something I've waited for a long time, and now to be a part of this squad now for where we're going feels at the right time for me to be back. Personally, just getting through every game I play, fitting well, and obviously the targets for a striker. I want to score goals, but for me, it's personally just getting through games, fitting well, and seeing how far we can go in the tournament.
Bone admits there was some adjusting in the first few days of being with the rest of the team in camp.
To be honest with you, the first week or so was tough coming in the fold here, like training, especially the warm weather, training twice a day for a couple of hours a day. It's been tough. Like the manager does put us through our paces, but I feel like the longer the time's gone by now, I've been in camp 2 weeks now. I feel like I've really started to adapt to the weather, the fitness and how he wants me to work. So my work rate is kind of now, rather than just running, I'm using it now more smarter, rather than just running around like a headless chicken. I'm now doing my striker work, like the little movements, the little sharp runs. So
And in tennis news, Spaniard Carlos Alcaraz has split with his coach Juan Carlos Ferrero, ending a partnership that brought him 6 Grand Slam titles and a world number 1 in the rankings. Ferrero began coaching Alcaraz when he was 15 and guided him to several titles on the ATP Tour before he became a force to be reckoned with in Grand Slams, converting him from a clay court specialist to a player who dominated on all surfaces. Alcaraz finished the year with the French Open and the US Open titles, while he won 8 titles in all as he secured the year-end number 1 for a second time in his career. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
One of the stories we'll be looking at on Rise and Shine a bit later is South Africa being among the world's fastest adopters of generative artificial intelligence, with 45.4% of adults using these tools. And this is according to research from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So that's the direction we're moving towards for IR, and we're also part of it, deep within.
So today's also quite a significant day, especially for our continent. In 1865, the United States passed the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and it's officially proclaimed the abolition of slavery and involuntary servitude throughout the country. That was 1865. And I think to get a sense of exactly how serious this thing was, slavery lasted in the order of nearly 300 years, 3 centuries. Thousands and thousands of Africans were taken from our continent, taken across seas, many dying along the way, into permanent servitude in a foreign land, which was America. So it was a significant moment in U.S. history. But sadly, it wasn't the end for suffering from black people, and they still struggle even to this day. So, 1865, slavery officially abolished in the U.S. 300 years later.
Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
Let's get our first business update for this morning on this Thursday on Rise and Shine. Here's Chanduko Ligege to get us updated.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says at least 18 companies have been barred from making business with government. This is despite the Special Investigating Unit's recommendations cited about 400 companies in wrongdoing during procurement processes. Godongwana revealed in a written parliamentary answer from Action SA MP Alan Beasley. Earlier this year, a report from the presidency to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts revealed hundreds of individuals, including companies, that the SIU recommended that they must be blacklisted. Beasley has described this revelation as a lack of political will by the government.
This means that 491 corrupt companies and corrupt individuals can continue trading with the state. Some of these companies and individuals are the key actors in the state capture inquiry as well as the PPE scandal. There's clearly not a political will to address corruption in our country.
The South African Local Government Association, SALGA, has called on National Treasury to immediately release the local government equitable share tranche for 75 municipalities across the country. National Treasury issued 2 circulars in September this year outlining its intention to invoke Section 216 of the Constitution and Section 38 of the Municipal Finance Management Act 56 of 2003. SALGA says these measures permitted Treasury with withdrawal with the withdrawal of the equitable shares which supports critical municipal functions. SALGA spokesperson Mutalatale Mudiba explains that the withdrawal will negatively affect municipalities to sustain services.
The South African Local Government Association has made multiple attempts to engage the National Treasury in an attempt to prevent the withholding of the equitable share and to ensure that affected municipalities are assisted to comply with legislative requirements.
Central African Republic has embraced opaque cryptocurrency schemes that raise the risk of state assets being captured by foreign criminal organizations. This is according to a report published yesterday as the country gears up for an election. President Faustin Archange Touadera is seeking a third term in office when the country, which has seen decades of coups, rebellions and unrest, goes to the polls on the 28th of December. Bhutan, a landlocked country in South Asia, has announced it will spend $1 billion of the country's reserves to build what it's calling a mindfulness city. The tiny Himalayan kingdom is famed for keeping a measure of its gross national happiness and has previously promised that the new city will combine spiritual values with economic innovation. The BBC's Paul Ross has more.
Bhutan promises that its new city will combine high-tech innovation with Buddhist spiritual traditions. Innovation is certainly needed in the tiny Himalayan kingdom. Unemployment is high, and many of its young people move abroad in search of work. The $1 billion of funding announced on Wednesday is currently held in cryptocurrency, which Bhutan began buying back in 2019. It's hoping this high-tech investment will create a more high-tech economy, but one which remains in harmony with its values.
$1 in Nigeria is 1,000 naira 453, Botswana 13 pula 08, Kenya the dollar is 128 shilling 3, Zambia 22 kwacha 93. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 50, Russia 80 rubles 01, India 90 rupee 47, China 71.3, South Africa 16 rand 77 cents. $1 is 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities: gold is trading at $4,334, platinum at $1,966 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $60.09 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
At Channel Africa 1 is our handle where you can contact us. You can ask us questions about the content that you hear on the show on Rise and Shine, as well as other comments you'd like to share with us. Your views are always welcome. That's on the platforms of X, of Facebook, of Instagram, of TikTok, as well as LinkedIn and YouTube. So we are everywhere.
I am curious, and it's always a difficult one to judge and measure, but what do you think might be the biggest news event of Africa for 2025? I'm not going to ask you to answer that, but maybe think about it. And
absolutely, Tanzania would be top there.
You reckon?
Kenya will be top. Top. I think there's top 3.
We had elections as well. Mozambique, Namibia.
Yeah, I would say top 3: Kenya, Tanzania, and Madagascar.
Interesting. Okay, I'm not sure. I don't know. I actually don't know. I think Mozambique really came close because it was about transitioning of power from the old to the new, and it didn't quite happen. Namibia nearly went through the same thing, but the ruling party survived. And then Botswana saw a whole new era come into play. The ruling party since independence disappeared, and a whole new team came in.
It was a busy year for Africa, that's for sure. It will be difficult to make a compilation on that. I think maybe at the best top 5 we can say. We can't say the top 1.
Indeed.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo
Samo e João Yabalá.
A situação do ativista angolano Serrote José de Oliveira, preso desde julho, tem gerado grande preocupação internacional. Conhecido como General Nila e presidente do movimento União Nacional para a Total Revolução de Angola, Serrote iniciou uma greve de fome em protesto contra a sua prisão, que considera arbitrária. De acordo com a Amnistia Internacional, o estado de saúde do ativista está a deteriorar-se rapidamente devido à falta de acesso a cuidados médicos adequados. Para discutir o impacto deste caso e o estado da liberdade política em Angola, vamos conversar com Dito Dale, ativista e defensor dos direitos humanos.
Nós estamos diante de uma clara estratégia de aniquilar o jovem, porque quando uma pessoa está doente, deve ser assistida. Ao não proporcionar esses cuidados médicos, o que o regime quer? Não quer que esse jovem saia livre e com vida da prisão, quer matá-lo.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio do Canal África.
Your morning companion
With the stories that matter.
This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now, South Africa is among the world's fastest adopters of generative artificial intelligence, with 45.4% of adults using these tools. Now, this is according to a new research from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, and the American multinational digital communications technology conglomerate Cisco. The findings also revealed that generational and well-being divides. Tuton Gobeni compiled this report for us.
New research from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, and Cisco shows that South Africa is among the world's fastest adopters of generative artificial intelligence, AI, with 45.4% of adults using these tools. Yet the findings also reveal generational and well-being divides. The report reveals that while younger South Africans are driving adoption with high trust and confidence, older adults remain uncertain and far less engaged. For Mike Mpanya, leader of Cisco's Country Digital Acceleration Program in Africa, he says Africa's infrastructure development is on the right trajectory.
If we are to think about how Africa is faring in terms of AI infrastructure development, the answer in terms of the trajectory perspective is that Africa is on the right trajectory. We are advancing, and we are advancing well. However, Africa remains underserved. And this is a challenge, but also an opportunity, where we're seeing the major cloud providers coming in, investing into the continent, a number of large tech players, Cisco included, making the right kinds of investment. However, we do know that for AI infrastructure to succeed, the adjacent industries and pre-existing conditions need to exist as well for success. And those being largely connectivity and reliable electricity. So in broad terms, the answer is we are advancing well, but more specifically, and where the opportunity is for us to reflect on the kind of infrastructure required for us to succeed in terms of deploying AI in Africa. And our view at Cisco is a sovereign, localized, nuanced infrastructure is most likely to succeed. And that for me is the exciting opportunity that we see when it comes to AI infrastructure on the continent.
Artificial intelligence has been seen as a tool to empower emerging economies, as AI is ultimately about enabling people to shape their own futures, and that when technology aligns with human purposes, it helps build more resilient and thriving communities, which Mpanya says with Africa's youngest population in the world, AI is going to enable Africa's growth on a scale that no technology has been able to do so far.
When we think about what's needed to unlock Africa's AI potential and for Africa to be able to compete globally, we've got the traditional things, which is connectivity, energy, compute, talent, capital, governance. And to that end, we've got the World Bank and IFC making serious investments. We've got organizations like Cisco. We train more than 1.2 million people in Middle East and Africa every year, based off our stats last year, through Cisco Networking Academy. But what I think is most important and should be top of mind for us thinking about how Africa can compete globally and what we can contribute to the world is African use cases. So Africa will distinguish itself because we'll be solving for challenges nobody else has. And in solving for those challenges, we are likely going to drive the necessary innovation that will propel AI forward because our environment has so many constraints. Constraints on connectivity, constraints on energy, constraints on fundamental logistics. And history has taught us that necessity is the mother of innovation. And if we focus on applying AI to local Africa-specific problems, we'll be able to lead and teach the world. And that for me is particularly encouraging.
Mpanya further says, in terms of Africa competing globally, the continent will distinguish itself as it faces different challenges in comparison to other parts of the world.
If we're going to think about how AI relates to the continent's socioeconomic problems and whether AI can solve those socioeconomic problems, we must first begin by identifying what are the most pressing issues on the continent. In my perspective, I think the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity on our continent remains poverty and unemployment. Why? Because Africa's radical advantage is not the minerals under the ground, but the people who walk that ground. In 25 years, we are going to benefit from a demographic dividend that no other continent has. And when we think about what young people need to unlock their potential, healthcare, education, the ability to trade, AI is able to enable that on a scale that no technology has been able to do before it. We are talking about an exponential level of productivity and opportunity. So AI is an enabler for the underlying economic conditions, but AI is not a silver bullet.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongobeni in Johannesburg.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, spoke with journalists in a final media stakeout in Geneva on Wednesday. This was on the sidelines of the Global Refugee Forum Progress Review. He answered questions about his decade-long career as the head of the UN Refugee Agency and 42 years of humanitarian work, as well as the impact of the last year of funding cuts on refugees and the organization. Let's take a listen.
There's a few things that were quite big that we met. The Global Compact on Refugees, of course, that was a big, that's a big thing. That will stay, I think, of all things in the history of refugee work, that we have a compact that is a point of reference. And, much as you hear, yes, good, bad, everybody's making reference to that. Many, many states are making reference, and they still pledge, which is good. So I'm proud of that positive part, because I firmly believe that certainly UNHCR is a protection organization and we have to defend the principles, and we try to do it, not always successfully. But we are also, this is the other 50% of our mandate, we have to work with states on solutions. And that, I think, I said to my colleagues when I came, I want to be the High Commissioner for Solutions. Now, I wasn't very lucky always, but I think that we've made some progress. Donors cut the funds, then came to the UN and said, what's the strategy? I'm sorry, there is a limit to how you can. So inevitably, this year has not been a strategic one. We had to cut right, left, and center all over the world, even in places where, I'm coming from Sudan. I was telling one of the side meetings today, we have a small team of a handful of people, have a dozen people covering the north of Sudan, border with Egypt, the new displaced people camp coming from El Fasher, and Khartoum. If anybody has been to Sudan and you know how much it takes to go from one place to the other, and we can't do otherwise because we have no money. So those cuts were unstrategic, and we had to respond with fairly unstrategic responses to reduce expenditure. It's very sad to have to go away having cut so many, apart from everything else, because the main impact is not on us, is on refugees, on displaced people, on people that are hungry, on children that don't go to school. I'm talking about the overall system. But I think, in a way, the most immediately painful, because I'm also leaving, is to have reduced the organization by 5,000 people. And, I hope it's enough to reduce expenditure, but the very big problem, and this is already your third question, there's many things, but what I think one big challenge is this extreme uncertainty of the resources.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
We go to South America now, where Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has accused the United States of trying to seize the country's natural resources. Speaking at a public event in Caracas, he called for peace and urged oil workers to protest in defense of free trade for Venezuelan oil. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has ordered a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering or leaving the South American nation. Bonolo Maribe has been following this story.
It has been a week since the United States seized the sanctioned oil tanker off Venezuela's coast, with bilateral tensions rising and the seizure being condemned by nations such as Colombia and Cuba. President Nicolas Maduro took to the podium to rally a protest aimed at protecting free trade in the region.
La clase obrera petrolera, a través de esta comisión constituyente internacional.
We must speak with ship owners in ports around the world to prepare a protest by oil and gas workers and by merchant marine workers against what we see as piracy by the US government, which is trying to impose privateering again. A big global protest permanent not just for one day, and to prepare the defense of free trade for Venezuela and the whole world. Because defending free trade and peace in the Caribbean and in Venezuela is defending free trade and peace for the whole world.
Una gran protesta de trabajadores petroleros, gasíferos.
Maduro also accused the US of targeting Venezuela's natural resources, while also refuting claims of drug trafficking.
Al pueblo de Estados Unidos le decimos.
To the people of the United States, we say again and again, 1 and 1,000 times, not blood for oil, not war for oil. The claims about drug trafficking are fake news, a lie, an excuse. Since they cannot accuse us of weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons, or nuclear missiles, they invent another pretext to create another Afghanistan, another Libya, and with moral authority and with God's blessing. I say no more Vietnam, no more Afghanistan, no more Libya, no more Iraq, no more endless war. We know we are morally and spiritually in the right.
Para crear otra Libia.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump announced on Truth Social that he's ordered a blockade of all sanctioned Venezuelan oil tankers. The move has since driven up global oil prices amid escalating geopolitical tensions. Bonolo Maribe, SABC News.
Australia is reconsidering its gun laws in the wake of the shooting attack in Bondi, in which 2 suspects killed 15 people. The country typically has fewer gun deaths per year than the US has in a day, but tweaks by some states have relaxed oversight over firearms ownership, say gun control experts. More on this is this Reuters news report.
In the wake of the Bondi mass shooting, Australia's federal government is proposing changes to the gun laws, including setting a limit on how many guns a licence holder can own and an end to granting licences in perpetuity. But complacency around background checks and loosening of the laws may have made it too easy for shooters to get weapons, says Roland Brown, Vice President of Gun Control Australia.
The fact that this shooter had a recreational shooting licence and having 6 guns, at least one of which was a high-powered rifle with a magazine, taking a military style of ammunition. Having that kind of firepower in suburban Sydney is really mad.
The country already has some of the world's toughest laws, including mandatory licensing and background checks, as well as registration of every firearm, introduced after the mass shooting of 35 people in Port Arthur, Tasmania in 1996. 50-year-old Sajid Akram, who was shot dead by police at the scene, received his gun licence in 2023 and had 6 legally owned weapons that he and his son allegedly used in the attack. 24-year-old Naveed Akram, who has emerged from a coma after also being shot by police, had been linked by intelligence with a group suspected of association with Islamic State. But the use of intelligence in adjudicating a firearms licence is not currently required by the Firearms Act, according to New South Wales Police Commissioner Mal Lanyon. Most people with guns in the state of New South Wales got clearance by proving they were in a target shooting or hunting club, according to published police data. These clubs require training and report to the police. But about half of the 220 government-accredited gun clubs in the state had no published physical address, and a mandatory 28-day cooling-off period when a person with one gun once more was removed in 2008. Sporting Shooters Association of Australia CEO Tom Kenyon said some gun clubs arrange training at central locations so don't need physical addresses, and no training could have prevented the Bondi attack.
The real issue is the radicalisation of individuals to the point that they thought it was okay to kill their fellow citizens. They also know that there was a failure of intelligence sharing between the federal government and the state governments, and that, in hindsight, it's screamingly obvious that these people should have been stopped and they should have had 0 guns, not 6.
The number of guns in Australia has risen for more than 2 decades, with more than 4 million legally owned guns in circulation, says think tank the Australia Institute. A report in January showed 2/3 of Australians supported stronger gun laws. As the federal government is considering gun law changes, New South Wales Premier Chris Minns said on Wednesday the state parliament will also reconvene next week to discuss urgent legislation on gun control.
The government will call back the New South Wales Parliament to deal with urgent legislation that we believe is required pre-Christmas to keep the community safe and ensure there's unambiguous laws in place when it comes to public safety.
All right, it's now time for our news with Onel Nzinzi. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The one-day SADC Extraordinary Summit ended yesterday with the deployment of panel of elders and mediation reference group to Madagascar to assist in finding a solution to the country's political crisis. This follows a youth-led protest over water and power shortage, which sparked a military coup led by Colonel Michael Randrianarina, forcing President Andry Rajoelina to flee the country. The meeting has also elected Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema as the incoming chair of the SADC region. The current SADC chair and South African President Ramaphosa read out their communique.
The decision we have taken to deploy a panel of elders and mediation reference group to Madagascar evidences and demonstrates our collective commitment to a peaceful and stable region. The mission will engage with all stakeholders in Madagascar to ensure there is an inclusive process leading up to the holding of fair and credible elections. We call on the people of Madagascar to take this opportunity to deeply reflect on the challenges facing their country and choose the path of peace, unity, reconciliation, and development.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has received the interim report of the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Political Interference and Corruption in the criminal justice system of the country. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya has confirmed this in a statement. The handing over of the Madlanga Commission interim report to President Ramaphosa marks 3 months since the KwaZulu-Natal Province Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi took to the stand at the Bridget Madlanga Justice College in Pretoria in September. Magwenya says the president will study the report.
President Ramaphosa will study the interim report while the commission, which is in recess, prepares to hear further testimony from new witnesses or persons who have previously testified. The president has expressed his appreciation for the interim report, as well as his expectation that the commission will, as part of its terms of reference, refer actions thought to be criminal acts for prosecution.
At least 12 people have been killed and 3 others abducted when gunmen attacked a mining site in a Tosto village in Nigeria's Recife Plateau State. Daylop Solomon Mwantiri, who heads the Borom Youth Molders Association, said the attackers, who locals identified as armed Fulani militias, struck late on Tuesday, leaving 5 others hospitalized with gunshot wounds. Police spokesperson Alfred Alabo confirmed investigations were underway. The latest attack underscores persistent insecurity in the plateau, a flashpoint of Nigeria's volatile Middle Belt region, where ethnic and religious strife has long fueled deadly farm herders' clashes. International relations expert Dr. Oscar van Heerden says the arrest and deportation of 7 Kenyan nationals from South Africa may exacerbate tension with the United States. Yesterday, the Home Affairs Department raided a location where Kenyan nationals were found to be working in the country despite only having tourist visas, which is in violation of South Africa's immigration laws. They were allegedly processing the applications of so-called Afrikaner refugees to the United States. Van Heerden explains.
Trump is going to, and Marco Rubio is going to make a big deal about this. But as the minister has indicated, it was lawful. They had to do a follow-up on those visas, and they did the necessary protocols, and now they have been deported, of course, with a ban of 5 years. So there's very little leg to stand on from Washington's point of view, but I'm sure President Donald Trump and Marco Rubio is going to make noise about it and try and make a big deal about it, because, as you know, there were also some U.S. embassy staff involved in the skirmishes.
Lastly, the authorities in the Indian capital Delhi have rolled out strict measures to curb air pollution that's been in the severe category for the past few days. Pollution is an annual winter problem in Delhi and its suburbs. The BBC's Anbarasan Etirajan.
Residents in the mega city of 30 million people have been complaining of severe pollution for the past week, with the air quality index often reaching 450 mark, way over the level deemed safe. A minister in the Delhi government said all private and government offices would operate with 50% attendance from Thursday, with the remaining staff working from home. Vehicles that are not compliant with the latest emission control standards have already been banned from entering the city, and construction activities remain suspended.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African perspective.
In our sports headline, Chief Medical Officer for the South African Football Association says Oswin Apolis's injury is not serious. India vs South Africa T20 clash has been abandoned due to adverse weather conditions. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wherever the hour finds you, across the world, here's your morning African lens on the world's leading story. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
channelafrica.co.za. Yes, you're listening to Rise and Shine, and a very good morning to you if you've just joined us. We have a lot coming up on the next in this hour, the second hour of the program. DRC, Human Rights Watch is really concerned about the risk to civilians in the eastern DRC, particularly this new city that's been captured by the M23 rebels of Uvira. We find out what their worries are about.
We also go to the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has wrapped up his first ever visit to Ethiopia, where he and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed agreed to elevate bilateral relations to a strategic partnership. Those stories and more, of course, coming up as we still have another hour to go of Rise and Shine together until 9 this morning. And that's Asanda, Beda and Peter Ndoro.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K,
or more of our forests have been destroyed. Tamo Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, We've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his capacity as interim chairperson of the Southern African Development Community, SADC, on Wednesday addressed and participated in a virtual extraordinary summit of SADC heads of state and government. The summit, convened by President Ramaphosa, is considering, amongst other issues, the political situation in the Republic of Madagascar following violent unrest in September that led to the departure of President André Rajoelina, the establishment of a transitional government and the election of the SADC interim chairperson following Madagascar's withdrawal. Channel Africa reporter Michael Mbewe has more for us.
Held under the theme Advancing Industrialization, Agricultural Transformation and Energy Transition for a Resilient SADC, the leaders are also deliberating on the findings of a SADC fact-finding mission deployed to assess developments in Madagascar, as well as the election of a new SADC chair following Madagascar's abscondment from its leadership responsibilities, underscoring the regional body's commitment to peace, stability and constitutional order. In his remarks, SADC interim chairperson Cyril Ramaphosa reflected on the instability events that took place in September in Madagascar.
In September of 2025, the Republic of Madagascar experienced political challenges that resulted in the formation of a transitional government. In the light of this development, the extraordinary SADC Organ Troika Summit convened on the 16th of October to assess the situation in the country. The Organ Troika Summit resolved to urgently deploy a technical mission to undertake a fact-finding mission to Madagascar. The outcome of this mission is contained in the report we will be considering this afternoon.
He said these developments brought forth a call to action to fast-track the implementation of SADC developmental objectives while raising concerns on the security situation in both the DRC and Mozambique.
The developments in Madagascar in September this year brought to the fore the urgent need to accelerate the implementation of our regional development objectives to attain our SADC Vision 2050. This vision seeks to achieve a region whose peoples live in peace and harmony and can realize their economic potential. At the same time, political and security challenges continue to plague parts of our region. The situation in the eastern DRC remains of great concern. We also stand in solidarity with the government and the people of Mozambique in their quest for stability and security in the Cabo Delgado province.
Ramaphosa says Madagascar has come a long way with systemic instability. Therefore, SADC has a collective duty to support Madagascar in achieving lasting peace and development amid renewed instability.
Madagascar has faced political and security challenges of a systemic nature. In 2009, SADC supported the people of Madagascar in their aspiration for democratic and peaceful future. Although important achievements were recorded, the recent developments indicate that much more work needs to be done to foster sustainable peace. Like all peoples in our region and our continent, the people of Madagascar yearn for a durable peace and development. We have a collective responsibility as the SADC region to make this a reality.
Ramaphosa maintains that SADC's politics, defense and security protocol remains central to promoting peace, democracy and political stability across the region.
Through our SADC protocol on politics, defense and security cooperation, we seek to promote and maintain peace, security, democracy and political stability in our region. The protocol also calls for solidarity amongst our people. Over the past years, we've made progress towards achieving these goals, notably with respect to consolidating democracy, promoting good governance, ensuring electoral integrity, and deepening a culture of human rights.
SADC Executive Secretary Elias Mahosi has called on regional leaders to apply collective wisdom in resolving Madagascar's instability, pledging regional support during the transition, while insisting on accountability, reforms, and a swift return to peace, rule of law, and democratic governance.
Your Excellencies, you are called yet again to decide on one of our member states that has faced disturbances and instability, all of which occurred right after a successful SADC summit held in Madagascar. We have the full confidence that with your collective wisdom and leadership, a lasting solution will be found to help the member state to get back to normalcy, as well as address all issues that caused these unfortunate developments. We trust that the region will partner with the Republic of Madagascar as she goes into a transitional period, but also hold the country accountable for all commitments to achieve a speedy restoration of peace and stability, rule of law, and expedited reforms. This stance will ensure that the country starts a new chapter towards a progressive, sustainable, and enduring democracy.
He said SADC leaders are expected to consider electing a new incoming interim chair to fill the vacancy left by Madagascar's withdrawal as the regional bloc moves to ensure continuity in its leadership structures.
Your Excellencies, you will recall that the extraordinary summit of the 7th November appointed the Republic of South Africa as interim chair of SADC, following the decision of the Republic of Madagascar to relinquish her role as the chair of SADC. The withdrawal of Madagascar created a gap in the SADC troika, which ought to be closed to ensure a smooth functioning of SADC. It is in this regard, and as part of the agenda today, the extraordinary summit will consider, and as I said, possibly elect the interim incoming chairperson of SADC.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's now 15 minutes past 7 Central African time, and we take a look at this story. Rwandan forces and the M23 armed group captured the city of Uvira in South Kivu province, the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC that is, on December 10, have put civilians at grave risk of abuse. This is according to Human Rights Watch. The organization says these forces and the Congolese military and its allies should facilitate safe passage for civilians fleeing the fighting and ensure that humanitarian aid reaches all those in need. More from Louis Mudge, Central African Director at Human Rights Watch.
Uvira, as many of your listeners will know, is just across the border from Burundi, very, very close to Burundi's capital of Bujumbura. It's a main city in South Kivu. It's widely regarded as the second city of South Kivu after Bukavu. And it's basically the main city on the road south from South Kivu down into what was then known as the Katanga provinces near Lubumbashi. So it's a critical point on the map of Eastern Congo. And the humanitarian situation in and around Uvira remains very concerning. We've seen hundreds of thousands of Congolese displaced over the past week with this renewed fighting. We've seen, as I'm sure your listeners are aware, the M23 take Uvira, as recently as just over the weekend. And last week, and we're now seeing, whilst there's some stability in the sense in town, because there's no more fighting with national Congolese forces and their allies, we're seeing the M23 and the Rwandan Defense Force push further south into areas known as Fizi and Baraka. Now, this completely contradicts what M23 said they would do 24 hours ago, which was they said they were going to liberate Uvira on the back of U.S. pressure, but that is turning out not to be the case. So a lot of disorder, a lot of rumors flying around, a lot of displacement, and a lot of confusion. And so that does not lend itself to a generally positive situation.
How has the situation put civilians at grave risk of abuse?
The areas controlled by M23, Bukavu, Goma, areas north of Goma, such as Rumangabo and Bunagana, I think can serve as bellwethers to civilians in zones now controlled by M23. There is, predictably, as we've seen over the last year, as this has played out, a degree of stability brought in once the M23 take the area because the fighting has stopped. So objectively, that's a good thing. But what we're seeing is the exportation of Rwandan repression into these zones. We're seeing human rights defenders targeted. We're seeing journalists targeted. Anyone who dares to speak about the abuse by M23 is targeted. We're also seeing M23 go around in Uvira. We're documenting this in real time, as we've documented in Bukavu and Goma. We're seeing M23 go around and hunt people who are accused of being sympathizers of either the Congolese National Army or its Wazalendo allies. This is a sort of broad coalition of allies, militia allies that are aligned with the Congolese army. So we're seeing them hunt particularly young men and carry out executions of people who are suspected of being associated or sympathizers of the Congolese army. So it is a very concerning situation for civilians who are going to be under M23 rule. And again, as I said, they announced they would leave Uvira, but they've shown no indication of doing that. So we can expect to see for civilians a decrease in freedoms of expression, a decrease in their ability to communicate with family members in Congo, other parts of Congo or outside of Congo for fear of being spies. We'll see an absolute adherence to M23 rules and regulations being implemented. And anyone who fails to follow those rules will be punished accordingly. And those punishments go from forced recruitment and detention all the way up to executions. So it is a very serious situation for civilians under M23 rule in general.
And what is your appeal as Human Rights Watch?
A lot of movement on calling for peace in the Congo and calling for territorial limits to be respected coming out of Washington. I myself have been following this region for 15 years. This is the most engaged Washington has been on the Eastern Congo in my experience. And I think those should be seen for what they are, which are net positives. There needs to be a recognition that when you talk about M23, you not only talk about M23, you're talking about the Rwanda Defense Forces. And it's going to take actors in powerful countries such as Washington and Europe to really turn the screws to President Paul Kagame and what's happening in Kigali for those folks to understand that the veil has now been lifted. M23 and the Rwanda Defense Forces are basically interchangeable. We're documenting thousands of Rwandan Defense Forces crossing the border into South Kivu. That could yield a lot of positive results. I think, I obviously don't know Paul Kagame. I don't know the inner workings of the decisions that are happening in Rwanda, but he's been doing this for so long that there's probably an assumption that folks in Washington will either look towards the next issue or will wait till the midterm elections. A lot of this, what's going to be key is a sustained effort and interest from Washington on this. And if that does manage to stay, that interest and the efforts that have been undertaken so far and holding people accountable under this peace deal that was signed earlier this month, then there could be a real turnaround in so much as that people are recognizing now Rwanda is such a negative actor.
Central Africa Director at Human Rights Watch. He was on the line to our reporter, Tlantla Mahlangu.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
We go to the Horn of Africa now, where Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has wrapped up his first ever visit to Ethiopia, where he and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed agreed to elevate bilateral relations to a strategic partnership. Now, the visit focused on trade, defense, technology, education, and cooperation in regional peace and security. We now speak to Samuel Getachew, who's an Ethiopian-based journalist, for his take on this visit and its significance. Samuel, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning.
So let's start with the atmosphere on the ground. How was President Modi's visit received in Addis Ababa, both politically and also by the general public?
Well, we have a large Indo-Ethiopian community in Addis Ababa and across Ethiopia. Many of them are involved in textile business, education, teaching university students and sometimes high school students. And there is a strong connection between Ethiopia and India, historical, cultural connection. And his visit was huge. It was celebrated on the streets. It was celebrated by government officials. And it was a milestone for the relationship that the Ethiopian government is hoping to produce from this.
It's been billed as a strategic partnership. I guess people might be wondering, has it been a game changer? What do you think has been elevated as a result of their visit?
Well, it looks like it's a game changer. Ethiopia has been looking for a partnership far away from the United States that has cancelled trade agreements like AGOA, and the cancellation of USAID has been huge in Ethiopia, in a country that has issues with famine. But the Ethiopian government is insisting through its membership with BRICS, with countries like South Africa, your own country, and India. There will be a new kind of partnership to really bring Ethiopia to where it used to be as a country that was one of the fastest growing in the region, which has now become a country of conflicts all over the country.
So a major focus was defense, cybersecurity, and counter-terrorism. Why is this area particularly important for Ethiopia at this time?
Well, the reality is Ethiopia is at war, not just within itself, but potential war is coming up with Eritrea, maybe, with even Egypt, in terms of the disputes we've been having in the last 10 years with the creation of the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And Ethiopia is fearful that it needs some kind of partnership to really defend its interests, and that's where India comes in.
And on the economic front, trade, investment, and infrastructure featured prominently as well. Which sectors do you think Ethiopian officials see as the immediate winners, maybe, from this partnership?
Well, Ethiopia is desperate in terms of recruiting foreign investments to this country. Many of the foreign investors have left because of endless conflicts, not just in Tigray that ended almost 3 years ago, I would think. And also there are conflicts in Amhara and Oromia, which has really affected some of the big investors in this country, including flower growers from Holland. And India has been showing interests, and Ethiopia has been a favorite in terms of bringing textile producers that are no longer, valued in Asian countries, and in a country that has no minimum wage and low standard. And I think Ethiopia would be the next destination for many of the Indian textile producers. And that was, I would assume, part of the discussion in terms of bringing Indian investors to Ethiopia.
Ethiopia recently joined BRICS and is still grappling with issues like debt and economic reform. Do you think closer ties with India might help Addis navigate some of these challenges?
Well, that's what the Indian Prime Minister Modi promised to help Ethiopia navigate some of its debt pressure that's coming from outside of the country. And that's what the main discussion was, to really bring the Prime Minister and help Ethiopia, because Ethiopia is under pressure. There are many debts that needs to be paid, and the Prime Minister has promised, and the Prime Minister seems to be content that he would be the one that can help Ethiopia really try to negotiate its debt that's overwhelming at the moment.
So there were a lot of photo opportunities, and it was quite symbolic in everything that one sees. But at the end of it all, do you think there were real practical agreements, things signed that are going to benefit both countries?
Well, it seems to be, politics is strange. I've seen in my time, I've seen many heads of state come in Ethiopia and be celebrated, and there's no deal at the end of the day. But this time, I think the Ethiopian government has really invested so much. I've never seen the prime minister head to the airport to really welcome a head of state. It's rare. It might have happened in the past, but few times. And the prime minister has really put so much of his points in this prime minister, and hopefully it will be different. But Ethiopia at the moment is really desperate to bring any kind of foreign investments, and it seems they've almost given up on the United States, and they see India, which is hosting the BRICS next year in India, would be the country that would really bring Ethiopia the kind of foreign investments it really needs. Because at the moment, the country is desperate. There's inflation that's double digits, debts that's coming up, and many challenges. And
Right.
hopefully, the Indian Prime Minister would be able to help. That's the take from the Ethiopian government side.
Samuel, great talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, that's Samuel Getachew, an Ethiopian-based journalist, speaking to us from Addis Ababa on Prime Minister Modi's visit to the country. It's 7:30. Here are your news headlines as we say good morning once again to Onelen Sinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The one-day SADC Extraordinary Summit ended yesterday with the deployment of the panel of elders and mediation reference group to Madagascar to assist in finding a solution to the country's political crisis. This follows a youth-led protest over water and power shortages, which sparked a military coup. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has received the interim report of the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Political Interference and Corruption in the Criminal Justice System. And U.S. President Donald Trump has delivered a prime-time address from the White House, touting his administration's achievements while blaming Democrats and his predecessor Joe Biden for much of the country's woes. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's now find out what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwati with our details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
First up, it's football news. Bafana has left their training base at the High Performance Center in Pretoria to travel to OR Tambo International Airport. In 2024, Africa Cup of Nations bronze medalists are on their way to Morocco for this year's edition of the Africa Cup of Nations tournament, where they hope to improve on their performance achieved in Ivory Coast last year. Chief Medical Officer for the South African Football Association, Thulani Ngwenya, says it's all systems go for Bafana.
We have seen that the coach has done exceptionally well since he took over. We'll take it one game at a time. So you can't actually talk about the final without actually looking at Angola. Our first opponent is Angola. We start with Angola. We move to the next one, which is Egypt. So we are ready. Everyone is ready. The technical team is ready. The support staff is ready. And we believe that we're actually going to go all the way. That's what we want to do.
South Africa wrapped up their AFCON preparations with a 1-0 win over Ghana. But much of the concern for the team was on the status of Oswin Apolis, who appeared to have been limping at full time, having come on as a substitute. Chief Medical Officer Ngwenya says it was just a minor knock and the winger is ready for selection come Monday.
We're not happy about the injury. Yes, it was a knock, but it was a minor knock. We actually managed him. We treated him overnight. He's much, much better. You'll see him when he walks. He's not even limping anymore. So we believe that we'll be able to actually help him. And we believe that he'll be ready for selection on Monday. So it's not something to worry about. So I can actually confidently tell the nation that our police will be ready for selection on Monday.
Cricket news now. The fourth T20 international between India and South Africa in Lucknow had to be abandoned to heavy fog and a high risk of danger. The hosts won the first and the third matches by 101 runs and 7 wickets, having bowled the Tories out for just 74 and 117. But the Proteas won the second match by similarly convincing 51 runs. The fifth and the final match of the series will be played at the imposing Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad on Friday. India will now head to the fifth and the final match knowing that they can't lose the series. They are enjoying a 2-1 lead. Let's look at tennis now. Nick Kyrgios believes few male players would accept the chance to face a top woman as the maverick Australian prepares to take on women's world number one Aryna Sabalenka in a battle of the sexes exhibition later this month. While many consider the 28th of December meeting between Kyrgios and 4 times Grand Slam champion Sabalenka in Dubai as nothing more than entertainment, critics believe it risks undermining the reputation of women's tennis. Women's trailblazer Billie Jean King famously defeated the 55-year-old former Grand Slam champion Bobby Riggs in a similar showdown, and Kyrgios considered he was a bit nervous. Sabalenka said this month men were biologically stronger than women, but her clash with the former Wimbledon finalist was not about that, and the event would only help bring women's tennis to a higher level. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us at +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figedeli Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
So today, December the 18th, Kenya became a republic in 1963, and that was 1 year after independence, with Jomo Kenyatta being sworn in as the country's first president. Now, the move ended the role of the British monarch as the head of state. Of course, there is a symbolic head in the terms of the Commonwealth, of which the Kenya still is. So Independence Day is on the 12th of December, so don't be confused. It's just that the country became a republic on the 18th. So Jamhuri Day is celebrated on the 12th. That was about 6 days ago. But what is interesting is that on December the 18th, the country has dedicated the day in Kenya as one day to honor minority and marginalized communities. And this initiative is aimed to promote cultural inclusion and diversity by hosting representatives from these communities to showcase their heritage, their traditional attire, songs and dance. There's a lot of happening in Kenya today. I believe there's a massive concert that's going to be taking place in Kisumu. So would it be nice if we could get on a plane and go to Kisumu, Asanda?
Téléchargez l'application Channel Africa sur votre Play Store, Apple Store, afin de pouvoir suivre toutes nos émissions en direct de là où vous vous trouvez. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Yeah, always bringing you the African perspective in all of the issues that we look at, including business. Let's get an update now from Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The government of Zimbabwe has formally banned all foreign nationals from participating in the country's artisanal mining sector. The new regulations have listed artisanal mining as a sector exclusively reserved for Zimbabweans. This means foreign nationals are prohibited from owning or exercising beneficial control over artisanal mining activities in the country. Independent policy researcher and political economist Kevin Tutani has criticized the implementation of the policy.
Zimbabwe makes around north of $2 billion in a year from remittances from the Zimbabwean expatriates, that is exported labor, which works in, overseas, within SADC and within Africa, right? Right. Now, apart from that, part of these remittances as well, which are north of 2 billion, are also coming from Zimbabwean investments, right, in other countries. When you look at its export structure, you would say more than 10% of Zimbabwean exports is coming from expatriate labor, foreign investments of Zimbabwean capital invested in foreign countries.
South African Minister of Electricity and Energy Dr. Hosiyensu Ramogopa says power utility Eskom is working hard to end load reduction in the country. Ramogopa was addressing hundreds of community members at Nkowankowa Community Hall outside Tzaneen in Limpopo province. He says 4 provinces are still experiencing load reduction. Ramogopa says Tzaneen experiences the most load reduction and they have started working to end it.
The first province is Gauteng. The second province is Limpopo. The third province where we experience load reduction is Mpumalanga at 20%. And the fourth one is KwaZulu-Natal. 95% of load reduction within the country is in these 4 provinces. Tzaneen leads the country with load reduction.
South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says at least 18 companies have been barred from making business with the government. This is despite the Special Investigating Unit's recommendations cited about 400 companies in wrongdoing during procurement processes. Godongwana revealed in a written parliamentary answer from Action SA MP Ellen Beasley. Earlier this year, a report from the presidency to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts revealed hundreds of individuals, including companies, that the SIU recommended that they must be blacklisted. Beasley has described this revelation as a lack of political will by the government.
This means that 491 corrupt companies and corrupt individuals can continue trading with the state. Some of these companies and individuals are the key actors in the state capture inquiry as well as the PPE scandal. There's clearly not a political will to address corruption in our country.
The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation signed a $553 million loan with a consortium of firms for the refurbishment of an Angolan railway line, part of the Lobito Critical Minerals Transport Corridor. The high-profile U.S.-backed Lobito Corridor, which will connect copper and cobalt mines to the Atlantic coast, is part of Washington's global push to secure access to strategic metals and its efforts to counter Chinese influence in Africa. Under the deal, the DFC will provide financing to the Lobito Atlantic Railway. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's giving a financial bonus to almost 1.5 million military personnel. He says each would get a warrior dividend of $1,776, which is a figure chosen to match the date of U.S. independence. Trump made the announcement in an address to the nation in which he outlined the achievements of his first year back in office.
In honor of our nation's founding in 1776, we are sending every soldier $1,776. Think of that. And the checks are already on the way.
Financial indicators: $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 453, in Botswana 13 pula 8. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shillings 03. In Zambia 22 kwacha 93. BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 50. In Russia 80 rubles 01. India 90 rupee 47. China 71 03. South Africa 16 rand 77 cents. $1 is at 75 pence to the British pound, 85 $1.25 to the euro. Commodities, platinum is at $1,955, gold $4,335 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $60.10 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Yeah, listening to channelafrica.co.za. That's where we're streaming live from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. A very good morning to you. I'm Peter Ndoro.
And I'm Asanda Beda. And one interesting thing that we touched on earlier in the week, or last week it was, Australia putting in the law that children under the age of 16 will not be able to access social media. Of course, those teenagers there are not happy. And then today, we were talking about Australia reconsidering its gun laws. So it's quite interesting that at the end of the year, they're making all these legislative changes.
Yeah.
And we wonder if the social media one will actually hold. Because those teenagers will find a way of getting
through. There's no way
through.
that's going to hold. And I mean, there's VPN, which actually puts you effectively in another country anyway.
Yeah.
So you sign up as if you're in France, meanwhile you're in Australia. And then you just put a picture that's not yours of some random character. I don't know.
And the reconsideration of gun laws, I mean, deaths from gun incidents in Australia are not that high if we compare to the US. But I don't know if that's a good comparison because the US is on its own league.
Yeah, 300 million people. And you know, the funny thing about US and guns is that Canada has more guns per capita than the US, but more people die of guns in the US per capita than Canada. So I don't know, there's a psychology obviously around gun ownership and that kind of thing. I've never been able to work that one out actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
South Africa's consumer price inflation has eased slightly, offering modest relief to households. The latest figures from Statistics South Africa show annual inflation slowed to 3.5% in November, and that's down from 3.6% in October. This marks the second slowdown in year-on-year inflation after a similar decline in March. Stats SA says that pressures eased in 5 of the 13 product categories. This may be so statistically, but you know, when Asanda and I go to the shops, we experience a very different story in terms of inflation. I wonder what your thoughts are. In the meantime, let's listen to this report by Innocent Samosa.
South Africa's inflation cools to 3.5% in November, offering modest relief to households. Patrick Kelly is the chief director for price statistics.
4 categories registered no change, while we noted higher rates of change for food from 3.9% in October. Meat prices increased on average by 12.2% in the 12 months to November. This is the highest annual rate since January 2018, when it was 13.4%. Beef products have experienced high inflation rates for several months, and now other meat products such as pork, mutton, and sausages are following suit. On the other hand, milk, other dairy products, and eggs recorded their 6th successive month of deflation.
This is the second time in 2025 that year-on-year inflation has slowed following a previous drop in March. Kelly says prices are falling, although at a slower pace.
Creeping from a negative 1.6% in September to negative 1.5% in October, and now negative 1.2%. Fresh milk occupied deflationary territory for most of 2025, and eggs have registered negative annual price changes since November 24. Inflation for cereal products moderated to an annual 1.7% from 2% in October, and the monthly change was negative 0.6%.
With inflation easing to 3.5% in November, how is this trend going to translate into real relief for South African households in the coming months? Head of SA Macroeconomic Fixed Income and Currency Research at Standard Bank South Africa, Elna Moomen, shares her perspective.
Price pressure just generally seemed quite soft in November, with many prices declining from October. Core inflation increased slightly to 3.2% from 3.1% in October. This adds to a reasonably benign inflation picture, which would be very encouraging for the Reserve Bank. More importantly, for the next MPC meeting is the improvement that we saw in surveyed inflation expectations in the BER's latest survey done in the fourth quarter of this year, which showed a general and quite marked decline in inflation expectations.
While the easing in inflation is a positive signal, economists caution that strained relief for South African households will depend on continued price moderation and broader economic stability in the months ahead. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Simos in Johannesburg.
Hearty laughter and joyous gatherings. Channel Africa celebrates the season with you on the African Perspective.
Nigeria has published its first comprehensive State of Women's Leadership Report 2025, highlighting the low representation of women in politics and business. According to the report by the Women in Leadership Advancement Network, or WILAN Global, women hold just 4.5% of National Assembly seats, occupy only 8 of 48 federal ministerial positions, and have very limited roles in the country's top 50 companies. The findings also point to opportunities for progress through targeted policies, advocacy, and leadership development programs. We speak to Abosede George Ogan, founder and executive director of WILAN Global, about what the report means for women's leadership in Nigeria. Abosede, good morning to you, and thank you so much for making time to talk to us.
Thank you, Asanda. Really good to join you this morning.
So what was the inspiration behind this this report, the State of Women's Leadership Report 2025? And can you also give us an overview in terms of what it touched on?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, for us at WILAN, we have a vision to inspire a shift to gender-balanced leadership. And I think for a couple of years, 7 years now, we've struggled with going to one single place where you have a comprehensive data set of women's leadership across the country. You would find them in different places, but you could never find it comprehensively in one place. So we did the dirty work, right, and the hard work to actually go to all the 36 states in this country and actually build a dashboard that anybody can navigate themselves if you wanted to know what the women's leadership data says in your state, who represents you in the Senate, who represents you in the House, who represents you in your state assemblies, who's your governor. As you know, Nigeria has 36 states and then the federal capital, right? But we have never had a female governor in any of those 36 states. I'm talking how many years now, as you know, of independence and many more years of democracy as well. And so it was important to us that we actually empower citizens, right, with this information, and then also policymakers who are thinking of building more inclusive governance to say to themselves, actually, this doesn't look good. And there's something we can do about it, especially, Asanda, as we're in a critical moment in Nigeria where we are pushing for our first affirmative action law. I know that 41 countries across Africa have an affirmative action law or bill, but Nigeria doesn't have one. I mean, South Africa has one, and many of our neighbors, but Nigeria is one of the 54 countries, or the 13 countries that don't have one. And I think it's really embarrassing. So in this moment in Nigeria, we're pushing for additional seats for women in the National Assembly and in the State House of Assembly, because for many years we have tried all the different things that you will do when you're trying to increase women's leadership, but we see that the numbers continue to decline. So I think the motivation and inspiration for the report is, one, to have that comprehensive data set, but also to empower citizens, policymakers who would like to see the data to make informed decisions. And for us, what we have seen is evidently there is a reason why we do the work that we do at Willan, because the numbers do not look good. If you even look at the private sector, where there has actually been an upward trajectory in terms of women's representation on boards, right, which is due to a legislation called the Nigeria Sustainable Banking Principles, which came into effect in 2012. The financial sector, the banking institutions continue to reap the benefit of that particular policy. And that's exactly what we think needs to happen at the national level. But even though it's been an upward trajectory, we have 31% of women on boards now. Only out of the top 50 companies on Nigeria's stock exchange, only 5 are chaired by women. So it just tells you that women continue to struggle to get to that top of the table. And that's what we think that this data just presents at a glance. And we hope to do it annually so that people constantly see that data and they know that is why we need to push for this bill. The National Assembly must pass this bill. This is the one moment that we have to change history in this country.
So let's go back to the politics side of things. I mean, in terms of what kind of picture this paints for the political landscape in Nigeria and how within that landscape women are viewed. The points you mentioned, that there's no affirmative action formally in the country. There's also has never been a female governor in all the 36 states. And also the figure that we give of 4.5% of National Assembly seats and a few ministerial roles. But those 4.5% of National Assembly seats being taken by women. What does it mean that in terms of how women are viewed by the politics of Nigeria?
I mean, it says a lot, doesn't it? We're fundamentally a patriarchal society, right? Where male privilege is a real thing. And I want to break down those numbers, Asanda, because, you know, when you say 4.5, I think even still sounds really nice. But we have 109 Senate seats in Nigeria, and only 4 are occupied by women. This is in the upper house. And in the lower house, we have 360 seats, and only 17 representatives are women. So it begins to give you a sense. And then when you talk about the state assemblies of 988 seats, our report found that only 49 are occupied by women. And we have 14 of those 36 states that do not have a woman in their state assemblies. So when you ask me, what does this do for women? First of all, just the optics of it, right? Because for younger women, for young girls to aspire to be in those leadership positions, they need to see women in these positions, right? So there's the role model piece that we're really losing out on, because we've just not seen enough women in those positions to aspire to think that this is something that we should do, right? As we choose our careers, as we make decisions on what we want to do, how we want to contribute to nation building and things like that. But I think there's the other piece around the culture, right, in our country around the role of women, right? So what is the role that we believe women should play in society? So we believe that women should be nurturers, women should be carers, women can do other things, like teachers, nurses, right? Even in the nursing council, because we also collect data for agencies, for associations, focusing on health, law and the economy, some of those critical sectors. And what we recognize is even when women make up 80%, for example, of the nursing population or nursing workforce, pardon me, the leadership is still 9 men and 2 women, but you have 80% women as nurses. as nurses. So that begins to give you a picture of how society views the role of women and why it has translated in these low representation numbers.
So, on the role of business, on the part of business, what are the barriers that are preventing women participating in the world of business as they should? Because it's one thing for a lot of women to be in business, but if they're not occupying those positions of leadership, then it doesn't prove satisfactory for equity or equality. And what do we need to do in terms of your vision moving forward in tackling that part of things?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we're doing is identifying the critical stakeholders, right? So with the NGX, the Nigeria Stock Exchange, it has a leadership. And, we're advocating to the leadership that those numbers need to go to 50%, right? But I think I would say, Asanda, that actually within business, oftentimes, so for example, with the leadership, in terms of executive leadership or executive management within businesses, we also see women. We see women CEOs. Out of Nigeria's maybe 30 plus banks, we have 11 that are led by women. But I think that that's because business, it's easy to measure. I always argue that if you appoint a female CEO today and in a year, the business, increases profit by 100% or 200%, you can attribute that to her leadership, right? And so I think with business, they have moved faster because it's easier to measure the impact of female leadership. That's something that we haven't been able to do in government. One, we haven't just had enough women in these positions to be able to attribute better education or health outcomes, for example, to a woman's leadership. But I think with business, because we're able to track and measure that, increasingly, more businesses give women opportunities. The challenge, though, is I personally believe we need to start tracking ownership of businesses, because it's one thing to be in the leadership, but I think it's completely another thing when ownership is 100% male, even if you had leadership as 40% female, if you see what I mean. So I think there's a lot that we need to do with business around advocacy, but I think that there's more incentive for business to make those changes. The final thing I'll say on business is we also need to track procurement, right? Who gets the business? And this is where small businesses come in, because as you know, Nigeria has the largest number of female small businesses, I believe, in the world, right? But they often play only at that micro and nano level. And what we want to do through the bigger business that are owned by men is to actually get them to commit procurement percentages to these smaller businesses.
We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much again for your time. We appreciate it. We're completely out of it.
Thank you very much.
Right, that's Itu Nuola, Hunga, Communications and Partnerships Lead for Willan Global, discussing the State of Women's Leadership Report 2025 and what it means for women's leadership in Nigeria. Let's get our news update. Here's Onele Nzinzi. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The one-day SADC Extraordinary Summit has ended with the deployment of the panel of elders and mediation reference group to Madagascar to assist in finding a solution to that country's political crisis. This follows a youth-led protest over water and power shortage, which sparked a military coup led by Colonel Michael Randrianarina, forcing President Andre Rajoelina to flee the country. The meeting has also elected Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema as the incoming chair of the SADC region. The current SADC chair and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa read out the communique.
The decision we have taken to deploy a panel of elders and mediation reference group to Madagascar evidences and demonstrates our collective commitment to a peaceful and stable region. The mission will engage with all stakeholders in Madagascar to ensure there is an inclusive process leading up to the holding of fair and credible elections. We call on the people of Madagascar to take this opportunity to deeply reflect on the challenges facing their country and choose the path of peace, unity, reconciliation, and development.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has received the interim report of the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Political Interference and Corruption in the Criminal Justice System. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya has confirmed this in a statement. The handing over of the Madlanga Commission interim report to President Ramaphosa marks 3 months since the KwaZulu-Natal Province Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi took to the stand at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College in Pretoria in September. Magwenya says the president will study their report.
President Ramaphosa will study the interim report while the commission, which is in recess, prepares to hear further testimony from new witnesses or persons who have previously testified. The president has expressed his appreciation for the interim report, as well as his expectation that the commission will, as part of its terms of reference, refer actions thought to be criminal acts for prosecution.
International relations expert Dr. Oscar van Heerden says the arrest and deportation of 7 Kenyan nationals from South Africa may exacerbate tension with the United States. Yesterday, the Home Affairs Department raided a location where Kenyan nationals were found to be working in the country despite having only tourist visas, which is in violation of South Africa's immigration laws. They were allegedly processing the applications of so-called Afrikaner refugees to the United States. Van Heerden explains.
Trump is going to, and Marco Rubio is going to make a big deal about this. But as the minister has indicated, it was lawful. They had to do a follow-up on those visas, and they did the necessary protocols, and now they have been deported, of course, with a ban of 5 years. So there's very little leg to stand on from Washington's point of view, but I'm sure President Donald Trump and Marco Rubio is going to make noise about it and try and make a big deal about it, because, as you know, there were also some U.S. embassy staff involved in the skirmishes.
Lastly, the World Health Organization has begun a 3-day global conference on traditional medicine in the Indian capital, Delhi. The aim is to make centuries-old practices more compatible with modern healthcare systems and bring scientific scrutiny through the new technology like artificial intelligence. Shema Kuravila is the WHO's head of the Global Traditional Medicine Center in India.
Traditional medicine is probably the longest, largest observational empirical study that allows us now to do a lot more research and development for priority health problems around the world. But what WHO's role is really the evidence to ensure safety, efficacy, trust across all of this.
Lastly, the Thai military says it's launched a renewed operation along its border with Cambodia to find 2 soldiers who went missing in overnight clashes. Reports said Thai soldiers retreated after facing stiff resistance from Cambodian troops. The fighting has entered its 11th day with more than 50 people, including civilians, killed. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Bafana Bafana coach says they are going for gold in Morocco. And Joe Benz has been axed as Italy's captain and dropped ahead of their maiden T20 World Cup. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
6 minutes past 8. We enter the third and final hour now of Rise and Shine. Thank you for staying with us up until this point. This is Channel Africa coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios, and that is in South Africa on channelafrica.co.za, on the SABC Plus app, as well as YouTube at Channel Africa 1 is where you can connect with us. I'm Asanda Beda with Peter Ndoro.
Good morning, Asanda Beda.
Good morning.
December the 18th. Can you believe this year's finished?
Yeah, no, it's done.
I'm flabbergasted. I remember January like it was last week. And here we are, December.
Besides looking at the year ending, we'll also be looking at interim chairperson of the SADC region and President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, saying the extraordinary summit of the regional bloc on Madagascar is one step in a bid to realize a peaceful SADC in 25 years. That's one of the stories we're touching on.
Yes, indeed. We'll be going there, and we're chatting to somebody inside Madagascar, a distinguished Malagasy historian, to get a sense of what Madagascar is like now post Rajoelina. Stay with us for that.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Interim chairperson of the SADC region and President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, says the extraordinary summit of the regional bloc on Madagascar is one step in a bid to realize a peaceful SADC in 25 years. He chaired the one-day meeting on Wednesday called to consider the report of a fact-finding technical mission to Madagascar. This follows a military takeover in that country sparked by massive youth-led protests against President Andry Rajoelina over water and power shortages in September this year. The meeting was attended by several heads of state, including the outgoing SADC chair and Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa, and the Malawian President and the chair of the SADC Troika on Politics, Defense and Security, Professor Arthur Peter Mutharika. Our political reporter Ntebo Mukobo filed this report.
Another high-level meeting of the SADC regional leaders in a bid to find a solution to another conflict in the region, this time around in finding peace in Madagascar after yet another coup, the second since 2009. Although the country is still in a period of political transition, with the new military leadership aiming for a 2-year transition to new elections and constitutional reform, it remains fragile with deep poverty levels. And President Cyril Ramaphosa says their meeting seeks to rescue the country from further deterioration.
The developments in Madagascar in September this year brought to the fore the urgent need to accelerate the implementation of our regional development objectives to attain our SADC Vision 2050. This vision seeks to achieve a region whose peoples live in peace and harmony and can realize their economic potential. Like all peoples in our region and our continent, the people of Madagascar yearn for a durable peace and development. We have a collective responsibility as the SADC region to make this a reality.
The SADC interim chair also noted some reasonable progress recorded by the SADC organ on politics, defense and security in ensuring peace and stability in some parts of the region.
Through our SADC protocol on politics, defense and security cooperation, we seek to promote and maintain peace, security, democracy, and political stability in our region. The protocol also calls for solidarity amongst our people. Over the past years, we have made progress towards achieving these goals, notably with respect to consolidating democracy, promoting good governance, ensuring electoral integrity, and deepening a culture of human rights.
However, President Ramaphosa also expressed his concerns at the worrying situations in the eastern parts of the DRC and Mozambique.
At the same time, political and security challenges continue to plague parts of our region. The situation in the eastern DRC remains of great concern. We also stand in solidarity with the government and the people of Mozambique in their quest for stability and security in the Cabo Delgado province.
After considering the report on Madagascar, the SADC Extraordinary Summit will also consider the formalization of the incoming SADC chair, with South Africa officially taking over. In accordance with the SADC Treaty, South Africa, as the outgoing deputy chair, will take over the SADC leadership position until August 2026. I am Tebo Mokobe in Pretoria.
Channel Africa sends you joy and good energy. This festive season, share your memories on our socials. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Channel Africa 1.
All right, let's continue to unpack this story. And we've just heard there that the Southern African Development Community, SADC, has concluded that it needs to deploy a panel of elders and a mediation reference group to Madagascar to help find a solution to the country's political crisis. And this followed a youth-led protest over water and power shortages, which sparked a military coup led by Colonel Michael Randrianirina, forcing President André Rajoelina to flee the country. Well, to help us unpack the situation in Madagascar, we're now joined by Professor Solofo Randriananja, who's from the University of Twamazina in Madagascar. Prof, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
You're welcome. And I'm always very happy to join this program.
Prof, what is the situation like in Madagascar now? There was a lot of excitement before Rajoelina's exit. The military took over, and I suppose the dust has settled a little bit now. What is Madagascar like at the moment?
For the moment, I think we are looking for a kind of stability, political stability, in the sense that the new authorities are preparing, trying to launch this kind of national conference led and organized by the Council of Christian Churches. But the problem is that this that was a very bad starting. It started on the 10th of this month, but for the moment there was just one inaugural session. But after that, we don't have any other following meetings. One of the reasons is that all the political actors, mainly the Gen Z and other NGO, which were involved in the changing of the government, do not agree about the leadership of the Christian churches in organizing this meeting, and in the components of the participants, including people from the former regime, including people who are well known as corrupted and so on. So the stake is to know if it is a reconciliation conference. That means we are going to reconciliate the former elements of the old regime and the new authorities, or it's a conference for to rebuild the nation. And
it sounds quite complex, and often what can happen is that people focus on the events of the current times, but usually the issues that keep coming up manifest in different ways, but usually there are underlying causes, underlying problems in the setup of the country's society in general. And then one day Rajoelina comes in and he's popular because people want change. Next minute the military comes in because people want change. But it doesn't really address what the underlying issues are. What might they be? Otherwise, we may see repeats of what we're seeing now.
Yeah, you mean the issues which cause those political instability?
I mean, in the end, it sounded like it was about water and power, but it was much more than that, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's that was the spark, but the problem is problem of governance mainly, and that's why this conference was to be organized for to examine with all the living forces of the nation what are we going to do with the future, and it should include all the components of the society from the bottom to the top. And we are on a standby now, waiting for waiting for what I don't know exactly, because it's there is a kind of I would like to say instability to some extent.
Let me ask you this. Is it the system of governance or the people that end up leading that is generally the problem?
It's a system of governance. We have to change the system of governance because, even if you have good people at the beginning, they are going to be transformed by what is existing now, which allows corruptions and all those bad things which led Madagascar to poverty since the beginning of this century, I would say.
Do you think that Madagascar might need external help, perhaps mediators, to chart a way forward? Because it looks as if everybody's looking at each other inside Madagascar, but somebody needs to come in there, perhaps as a third party to help the country move forward.
Oh, yes, that would be great. But the one of the condition is that this third party should know the Malagasy realities, which are quite complex. And this third party do not just have to come and set, the standard frames, which are not that effective, like good governance and all those democracy, elections, free and fair. We tried all this, but we have to find to mobilize really local political cultures and mix them with external experiences. That I think that is one of the solutions.
The young people can't be ignored in whatever equations come out because the population is generally young now, and they seem to be the ones driving the most change. We know what they don't want. We know what they don't like. Have they been clear in terms of what they want to see?
Yeah, that's the main problem, because all these big parties, like this socialism or even the liberalism ideologies, uh, they have to be adapted to the local situation, but not just imported like that. And the problem with what is currently happening now, it is not the young section of the population which is concerned. It's all the population. We have to find something which is uniting, a common goal for the whole nation. That's the main problem, I think, for the moment. And the Council of Christian Churches are not, in spite of their moral authority, supposedly, they are not able to give that to the nation apart from the general themes like integrity, against the corruption and so on, more justice. But we have to find a way to reach those goals and to put that in
have
in
you
a
found that the
formula.
military is sincere in its efforts in terms of transitioning the country back to some kind of civilian government? We've seen, sadly, examples where that's how they start, but once they've enjoyed a little bit of power, sometimes it takes quite a long time to get them out of the president's office. What sense are you getting from the current military?
So they are military, and the power is rotten in always people, even though they were not very sincere at the beginning. I can give you an example. For instance, the Colonel Michael Arandianirin went to Dubai very discreetly those last days, and we don't know why he went there. Did he meet former president to negotiate? We don't know. We have a lot of rumors, and it was like a secret and private trip, just for like 1 day or 2 days trip. And so that's that's quite worrying to this absence of transparency. Well, of course, he explained that he was there for to meet local businessmen and some other potential investors in order to have money, to implement the effort of the government for electricity and water supply. But Dubai is a destination for the local elites to export illegally gold and to have a secret bank account for many
In fact, that
years.
was going to be
So,
my next question, is that one of the features that we see often across the continent is that there is a ruling class, in inverted commas, that their commercial interests, personal interests, often influence how governance is done. Has that been the way Madagascar has experienced it?
I don't understand your question. I'm sorry.
All right. So what I'm saying is that often we see in countries across the continent where there is
Okay.
a wealthy group of people in society that have a
Okay.
lot of influence in terms how government and governance is done. Is this something that you've experienced in Madagascar? Because often when that is the
Oh,
case, change is very difficult because of the influence is very
yeah.
strong.
Yes, of course. But if you can include that kind of this category of people, because you cannot prevent people from becoming rich and wealthy. But if you can include their concern in the principle, in the main goals of the whole nation, I think that could work. Uh, uh, I don't know. There's the Chinese example, for instance, could be taken as a model in for this specific topic. I mean, we we don't have to take those kind of people as enemy since they agree to mix their interest with the interest of the whole nation. But maybe I'm very
Okay, I
optimistic.
understand. In the meantime, is the military actually running the country? I mean, are services happening? Is the daily running of a country happening under the military?
Yes, I think there is no major problems. I mean, like famine or or things like that. But they cannot do miracle as well, because to restore electricity and water supply for the whole nation, it's quite a huge task. But they ask people to be patient, but we can see efforts done, especially for let's say for the young section of a population, and the students mainly. They are trying to to remanage the universities and the water supply, electricity, and those kind of things. But
Prof, perhaps one final question. Are you hopeful that Madagascar will find a solution?
Yeah, of course, I'm not. I think the general feeling is that people are very happy that Andra Joel is gone, and that there is a movement to punish all these corrupted people. But we have to be patient and to find this way I was talking about, to peaceful life, social life, and economic prosperity.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time, but Prof, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much indeed for sharing your thoughts and your insights with us.
You're welcome.
That was Professor Solofo Randrianja from the University of Twamazne in Madagascar, speaking to us about the current situation in the country. It seems as if the military is trying desperately to find a way back for the country and trying to bring people together, but it's not very clear how those steps are going to move forward in a way that pleases everybody. It's 8:30, which means it's time for your news headlines with Onelin Sinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The M23 rebels have begun withdrawing from the eastern Congolese town of Uvira in an effort to support the US-backed peace efforts, promising to complete the pull-out by no later than today. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa will now study the interim report of the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry into criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice system of the country. The commission handed over the interim report yesterday, and the Australian government has announced new laws against hate speech after 15 people were killed in Sydney in a mass shooting targeting an event marking Hanukkah, the Jewish festival of lights. Channel Africa News, I'm Onelin Tsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's now find out what's happening in the world of sports. We say good morning once again to Fikile Lingwadi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Morning, Asanda. Let's bet off with cricket news. Joe Burns has been axed as Italy captain and dropped for the squad just months before their maiden appearance at the T20 World Cup, which will be co-hosted by India and Sri Lanka. The 36-year-old Burns, who played 23 tests for Australia, led Italy in the World Cup qualifiers, where they secured a place at the global tournament with wins over Guernsey and Scotland. The Italian Cricket Federation have subsequently announced Wayne Madsen, the veteran Derbyshire Beda, as captain for the series against Ireland and the T20 World Cup. The board did not give an official reason for Ben's axing, but said in a statement the decision responds to the need to ensure stability, harmony, and continuity for the team, elements deemed to be priorities over short-term objectives. On to football news, the South African national team coach Hugo Broos says his team will be going for gold at the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco that begins on Sunday. Broos also said it's important to win the opening game against Angola on Monday. Bafana Bafana surprised all and sundry at the previous AFCON tournament in Ivory Coast when they finished third to earn a bronze medal. The team departed for Morocco on Wednesday evening. South Africa will be looking to improve on their showing in the previous AFCON tournament in Ivory Coast. And Bruce says they will be aiming to go all the way this time around.
Yes, we want to bring back home gold, but this is a very tough tournament. And we saw last time everybody thought it should be Morocco or Senegal. At the end it was Ivory Coast. And then nobody expected South Africa. And if we were a little bit lucky in the semi-finals, we played the final. So that means that it's very difficult to predict before the tournament we will be that or it will be that. But you can be sure we win only one thing, and that is to bring the cup to South Africa.
There were reports that SAFA and the team had not reached an agreement regarding the bonuses, but Brewers says that has now been finalized.
And it's not only in South Africa or not only in China or whatever, or in Belgium. Every big tournament there is a discussion between players and the federation. And there is always a solution. There is always a solution, and people want that is a very big, that becomes a big problem. It's just a matter of discussions, and we had it the last AFCON, and we had it now too. We go to Morocco now with the flight. Everything is done.
And finally, Formula One has unveiled new technology to simplify the technical complexities of its sweeping 2026 regulations. The sport is introducing major changes next season, including new chassis rules, sustainable fuels, and upgraded 1.6-litre V6 turbo hybrid engines with greater electrical capacity. Drivers will now manage energy deployment throughout races, even in qualifying laps. F1 and the FIA consulted fans, teams, and experts to ensure the language is clear and accessible. Previous jargon such as X mode and Z mode for active aerodynamics has been dropped in favor of straightforward description of what the technology does. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, File Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Coming up on the show, we talk about Zimbabwe having introduced new regulations restricting the participation of foreign nationals in some of the country's economic sectors and subsectors. We'll find out what those sectors are and what law this falls under in terms of what's the developments in Zimbabwe. That's on Rise and Shine still.
And today in history, Central African Republic. And this is sadly some of the things that we've been observing. Jean Bedel Bokassa formally crowned himself Emperor Bokassa I, transforming the Central African Republic into the Central African Empire. A move that drew widespread international criticism, as you can imagine, symbolized the excesses of post-colonial authoritarian rule. How many times have we seen this? And they may not call themselves emperors, but they certainly behave like that. So, Jean Bedel Bokassa called himself Emperor Bokassa on this day in 1978. In South Africa, we've got an interesting expression which sometimes gives you an idea of how we're feeling. And for me right now, I just want to say, my babo.
The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download, free to connect.
Okay, so what are we looking at right now? It's time to take a look at the final business news update on Rise and Shine this morning. And at the business desk is Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has asked Parliament to approve a $29.96 billion spending plan that repeals and reenacts the 2024 budget to run through December 2025, aiming to end overlapping fiscal cycles from recent years and tighten controls on public finances. The move follows months of criticism by lawmakers over the government's reliance on rolling over capital budgets, which led to the 2024 capital spending being extended first to June and then to December 2025. The proposal aims to reset budget discipline in Africa's most populous country after years of missed January-December cycles that have muddled planning and undermined trust in government spending. The government of Zimbabwe has formally banned all foreign nationals from participating in the country's artisanal mining sector. The new regulations have listed artisanal mining as a sector exclusively reserved for Zimbabweans. This means foreign nationals are prohibited from owning or exercising beneficial control over artisanal mining activities in the country. Independent policy researcher and political economist Kevin Tutani has criticized the implementation of the policy.
Zimbabwe makes around north of $2 billion in a year from remittances from the Zimbabwean expatriates, that is exported labor, which works in, overseas, within SADC and within Africa, right? Right now, apart from that, part of these remittances as well, which are north of 2 billion, are also coming from Zimbabwean investments, right, in other countries. When you look at its export structure, you would say more than 10% of Zimbabwean exports is coming from expatriate labor, foreign investments of Zimbabwean capital invested in foreign countries.
South African Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Hosiyentu Ramogopa, says power utility Eskom is working hard to end load reduction in the country. Ramogopa was addressing hundreds of community members at Nkowankowa Community Hall outside Tzaneen in the Limpopo province. He says 4 provinces are still experiencing load reduction. Ramogopa says Tzaneen experiences the most load reduction and they have started working to end it.
The first province is Gauteng. The second province is Limpopo. The third province where we experience load reduction is Mpumalanga at 20%. And the fourth one is KwaZulu-Natal. 95% of load reduction within the country is in these 4 provinces. Tzaneen leads the country with load reduction.
The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation signed a $553 million loan with a consortium of firms for the refurbishment of an Angolan railway line, part of the Lobito Critical Minerals Transport Corridor. The high-profile U.S.-backed Lobito Corridor, which will connect copper and cobalt mines to the Atlantic coast, is part of Washington's global push to secure access to strategic metals and its efforts to counter Chinese influence in Africa. Under the deal, the DFC will provide financing to the Lobito Atlantic Railway. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's giving a financial bonus to almost 1.5 million military personnel. He says each will get a warrior dividend of $1,776, a figure chosen to match the date of U.S. independence. Trump made the announcement in an address to the nation in which he outlined the achievements of his first year back in office.
In honor of our nation's founding in 1776, we are sending every soldier $1,776. Think of that. And the checks are already on the way.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira, 453 in Botswana, 13 pula 08. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shillings 03. Zambia, 22 kwacha 93. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 50. Russia, 80 rubles 01. India, 90 rupee 47. China, 71.03. South Africa, 16 rand 77. Looking at commodities, gold is at $4,332, platinum at $1,959 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $60.21 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
So as we were talking about the season of festivities and the year ending, of course we want to send the message to everybody who will be traveling this festive season to be safe, and I guess it's a great time to connect with family and friends, but also bearing in mind those who've lost loved ones, and hoping that everybody will get the kind of support that they need if they're going through tough times. It's not always festive this season for some people.
Yeah, sadly, we're going to lose a lot of people over this time because of the travel. So it's always mixed. But let's pray, as we do each year, that sanity prevails and that we don't drink and drive and do things like that, and get safely to where we need to go and get safely back.
Yeah, and we got a few tips the other day on that, road traveling and whether it's air travel, and the key being plan ahead of time. The rush is never a good idea.
Amen.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Just a little shy of 8:45 Central African time. We go to Zimbabwe now, where the country has introduced new regulations restricting the participation of foreign nationals in some of the country's economic sectors and subsectors. Under Statutory Instrument 215 of 2025, foreigners in Zimbabwe are barred from operating in sectors such as artisanal mining, bakeries, advertising agencies, salons, employment agencies, and the local arts and crafts industry. To unpack what this means for artisanal miners, investment, and mining governance, we speak to Farai Magubu, who is director of the Center for Natural Resource Governance, or CNRG. Farai, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm well. Thank you.
We appreciate you making time to talk to us this morning. Let's start here. Your reaction to these new indigenization regulations under Statutory Instrument 215 of 2025, and take us through some of the ways in which foreign-owned companies comply with the requirement to transfer ownership to locals.
Well, according to the policies they have announced, foreigners must first of all, within 30 days, submit a regularization plan to the government. And if that plan is approved, they have 3 years to cede 75% of their shares to locals. And that can be done in phases of 25% per year. But this must be completed within 3 years. So that's what we have noticed. And also, there's also a bit of a challenge in that there is a caveat where they are saying they can also apply to the minister for exemption. And I think that is a very big problem, especially when we look at the implementation of the Indigenization Act of 2007, where foreign businesses were supposed to apply to the minister and they submit plans to the minister. The whole process was very corrupt. A lot of them ended up paying bribes, and as a result, the Indigenization Act died a natural death, and then now they are trying to resurrect it again. But we are seeing the same over-reliance on the minister without checks and balances, without a broad framework of implementation that will ensure that everything is above board, is not politicized, and that the corrupt elements in government do not take advantage of it to enrich themselves.
So what penalties exist for non-compliance?
Well, non-compliance will attract, obviously, a fine, and they've also stipulated that those who do not comply will be suspended or have their licenses revoked by the government.
Could the mandatory 25% annual divestment negatively affect the confidence in Zimbabwe's mining sector as you see it?
I don't think it will affect much because, first of all, the law of Zimbabwe is silent about artisanal mining. So when they come up with a policy to say artisanal mining sector is now reserved exclusively for Zimbabweans, it's more like building a castle in the air, because the parent mining law, the 1961 Mines and Minerals Act, is the one which the government has used over the years to criminalize artisanal mining. They've had several operations to arrest artisanal miners, including Operation Chikorogoza Chapera, Operation Akudzokwi in the diamond sector. So there's a bill, Mines and Minerals Bill, but it is still before Parliament. It is not yet a law. So I really do not know what they mean when they say artisanal mining sector is reserved for local Zimbabweans, when the artisanal miners themselves are criminalized. I think they should have gone a step higher to say small-scale mining is reserved for Zimbabweans. Because what we see is that the small-scale mining sector is dominated by the Chinese. And they actually prefer it because it absolves them of many responsibilities, including the payment of royalties. They pay less royalties than large-scale mines. But it sounds like this policy is excluding that sector. So we are seeing the continued protection of the Chinese. And as for the Zimbabwean artisanal miners, I think the struggle continues, because as long as the law does not recognize artisanal mining, then we are going to see policy inconsistency, where one ministry will be saying artisanal miners are allowed. That's the Ministry of Indigenization. But you come to the Ministry of Mines, you come to the Ministry of Home Affairs, they may continue to criminalize them. So I really think government needs to align the laws with this policy so that there's no inconsistency, and these people need the protection of the law. But overall, I don't think it's going to affect much in terms of the mining sector.
So what are the challenges that you foresee then in Zimbabwe, let's say similar to those Ghana experienced, as an example, during its Galamsey or illegal mining crackdowns?
Yeah, the challenges are quite staggering, given that our economy has been struggling to take off. More and more Zimbabweans are turning to the artisanal mining sector for survival. It's an area where they are guaranteed of earning US dollars, which is the currency the Zimbabwean people recognize and appreciate. Now, if this policy is not really articulated and pronounced well and implemented well, we may see politicization of artisanal mining sector where members or citizens who are politically exposed are the ones who are going to be protected. But the majority of the citizens who are not politically active or connected to politicians will continue to be criminalized in the course of their artisanal mining work. And that is a problem that Zimbabwe has had over the years, where everything is politicized. So government really needs to make the law predictable and inclusive. So and also ensure that the implementation of that policy is done within the confines of the law, because it should not be free for all, where they open up the whole country to artisanal mining. We have already had our enough share of the environmental destruction impacts of artisanal mining. So I really think they are walking a very tight rope, but with consultation, I think we can come up with something that is implementable.
Thank you. We're going to leave it there, Farai. Thanks so much for your time and chatting to us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Bye-bye. Farai Magu is the director of the Center for Natural Resource Governance, CNRG, based in Zimbabwe, giving us a lowdown of some changes being made in the country with new regulations introduced restricting the participation of foreign nationals in some of the country's economic sectors and subsectors.
So let's find out what's happening on the move a little bit later on, as we say a very good morning to Palace.
Good morning.
So what's coming up? What's coming up?
All right, you know, we do use our phones for everything these days, but one thing that's been quite concerning is the things that we almost aren't afraid to capture on our phones anymore, like the deaths of people and putting those things on social media in graphic imagery, and it's desensitized a lot of us. So we're going to be having that conversation. How do we stay human and respectful, you know, of the world and of people, even while using our phones? And we're going to delve into that in the first hour. In today's Becoming feature, I don't know if anybody remembers South Africa man who had designer socks, Spoo socks.
Yes,
and he's recently gone onto social media speaking about he moved to America and now he's a cleaner there. But he's speaking about really starting his life over, you know, and just trying to, as an entrepreneur, starting his life all over again and not being afraid to also display, I guess, the not so great sides of entrepreneurship and of his journey from really award-winning fashion designer in South Africa to cleaner now in America.
Was he going to the States to progress on his entrepreneurial skills or what?
Well, we're going to find out a little bit more because on his social media, he doesn't really say much why he went there. He says he just went there with the last money in his pocket.
I hope it wasn't one of those trafficking situations, because that
no. He went there intentionally.
His socks business took off, and sadly what happened was it grew faster than he was able to manage it. And then there was an attempt to build a car. And that didn't quite work out either. So everything seems to have collapsed. I think the sock business had legs had he just managed it properly. But it'll be interesting to find out why it didn't work.
Very interesting to go from socks to cars.
Yeah, and I'm worried about this whole, as you say, people taking pictures of things. You know, someone is on the floor dying. Instead of helping them, you're on your phone.
I mean, even
filming.
if you can't help, I mean, we don't really scale to help people who are dying, right?
Though.
But you are taking these images, graphic images, sometimes of people who've already passed, and posting them. These are people who have families, who have friends, and now these images of them are all over social media. In fact, recently we saw South African DJ and Waris, shot in the streets, and those pictures of him circulated on social media. So did AKAs, so did many other people, especially well-known figures.
And the shocking bit is some people's families find out on social media first. before they even
through
are
that
told.
graphic image.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's coming up on The Move.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa. Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za.
This week on the Channel Africa Conversations podcast, our colleague Peter spoke with ZANU-PF's Director of Information and Publicity, Farai Marapira, about a range of pressing issues affecting the country. Among the topics discussed were corruption within government and the party's leadership, the state of the economy and the high unemployment rate. Marapira reflected on Zimbabwe's journey in rebuilding the economy following sanctions and critiqued the reported high unemployment figures, arguing that the use of Western measurement standards has inflated the numbers. Let's take a listen.
When we speak or hear of Zimbabweans being unemployed, it is because people are still using the Western measuring stick of what they want to term employment. We as Zimbabwe underwent sanctions, and we as Zimbabwe have been rebuilding our own country by ourselves, and we have a very large and vibrant small-scale industry, whether it is in mining, it is farming. We have a very strong and vibrant small-scale sector. 60% of our gold is done by small-scale miners now, and we have some of our locals who have now moved to medium-scale mining, and some are now large-scale miners in their own right. So, as we have moved, we've had to be a country that is walking a path which has not been walked before. So, if people speak of unemployment in Zimbabwe, it's only because they are using that measure from the West. But we are not a Western country, we are not a Western economy, and we are not in a Western climate. We are doing Zimbabwean things the Zimbabwean way, and those statistics on employment are very far-fetched and very misleading.
A fascinating conversation it turned out to be, actually. So please make sure that you tune in for that podcast being uploaded later today. And it's going to be today, actually. In fact, it may even be as we finish speaking, maybe uploaded already on our YouTube channel. And also on SABC Plus, you'll be able to find it there. As I said, fascinating thoughts. That's where I'm going to leave it today in terms of shared by the ZANU-PF spokesperson there. All right, so and that's how we come to the end of the program for us, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how we say goodbye as Rise and Shine. We'll do this again tomorrow, 6 till 9 of Africa Rise and Shine. Stay tuned to Channel Africa. My name is Asanda Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro as we hand over to On the Move.
Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play.